Okay, for this project, we're going to be using collage, so putting different layers of images together, like this. So I have like two pieces of paper that I found, or two magazine pieces that I'm going to be putting collaging together. And then we're also going to be using textile. So textile again means using like any kind of fiber in your artwork. So using like threads, using cloth, things like that. So we're going to be actually sewing through our collage to make a textile and collage piece, so a mixed media piece. Here are the requirements for this. At least 2 layers of collage, so in this case I have at least 2 pieces of paper that I'm using to work from. You can use more, of course, but you have to have at least 2. Careful cutting of collage layers, no extra background near edges. So for example, I started cutting this out, okay, already. And let's just say that I finished cutting it and I left it kind of like this. Okay, so you can see here that there's extra background coming through. Like my goal was clearly to cut out this subject, this woman, but I've left some edge here. So if you have any visible edges, and you didn't carefully cut out every single edge, that's going to take points off. You can't get a 3 that way. Okay, so be really careful about cutting. Meaningful interaction between images and textile. So once you collage everything together and you start sewing your thread through the image, there should be an interaction between the subject. So in this case, I've chosen this woman, but it could be anything for you, right? It could be an animal, or it could even be this carrot if that was like the main focus of the collage, right? So whatever subject you've chosen, there should be a meaningful interaction between the threads that you sew into the piece and the subject, right? It can't just be like a random thread that just is scribbling around. It has to be some kind of interaction between the two. Textile should cover at least half of the total artwork for a 4, or it could be a quarter of the total artwork for a 3. Okay, so that doesn't mean the whole thing should be completely covered like a carpet or something, but it just means that there has to be some kind of like thread design that covers at least half of the whole artwork for a 4. No floating subjects. So again, we'll go back to my example here. I've chosen this as my background. Now let's say that I do this and this is my collage piece. Do you see how she's just floating there randomly? Like her body is cut off and it's just stuck there and it's floating there? That will also bring you down. You have to figure out a way to make your subject fit into whatever you're collaging, okay? And one more thing, no text. There shouldn't be any text in your piece, okay? So one way I figured out to fit her into the landscape, first I would have to finish cutting her out, but one thing I did was I found a hard edge in another image in the background, and I cut carefully along that edge, and then I can just put my subject inside of that. Okay, and then she's no longer just floating in there. She's actually like part of the background. Okay, so that's a really great way to do it. It's just to find a hard edge somewhere in your background, cut into it, and it makes almost like a pocket, and then you put your subject inside. Another way to do it would be for me to cut her leg, cut this white part off of where her legs are, and to just have that be at the bottom. It's just not as interesting, okay? All right, so we'll move on. So as I said, I looked through magazines and I found these 2 layers. Again, that's the minimum. I'm going to finish cutting out my subject. And again, it's really important that you don't have an edge on the subjects, on the things that you are meaning to cut out. So open up your scissor all the way like this and use that little area where the 2 metal pieces meet. Use that to guide your cutting, and you can just turn your subject however you need to, or the background however you need to, and just always open your scissor all the way up. Don't close it all the way down. You want to open it up and just make little tiny cuts. But as long as you're cutting in that center area between where the 2 pieces of metal meet, you should have really good control of your cutting. Okay, I'm not going to worry too much about her legs right now because I think I am going to put her inside of this area. okay? So now here is my background, okay? So first I'm gonna see how I'm gonna put the two together. And like I said, I had this idea of, I have found this hard edge in the background, this yellow part, and I cut very carefully along that. If I had cut here, it would look strange because these are like dots. So that's why I stopped there. So you wanna be sure that you have a nice, hard, distinct edge. And then I'm gonna put her inside of this. Okay, so I like the way that looks. I could even have like a little bit of her leg sticking out. That would look kind of cool, I think. Okay, so I'm liking the way that that looks. And now I'm gonna glue her into place so that that doesn't shift around. And you just need a little bit, not a lot. So I just turned the subject over, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of glue all over. Okay, that's the back, this is the front. And again, I'm going to carefully put her in this little pocket so that she kind of fits into the landscape, because we can't have any floating bodies. And I like the way that carrot looks, so I'm gonna try to maybe move her up a little bit. And then I'm gonna carefully just put it back into place. So now she's glued into the background. And I wanna make sure that her head is in place. So I might need to add a little bit more glue right here to the edge, so her head is not sticking very well. So I want to make sure that doesn't come off and that stays in place. Okay, and then I also want to make sure this part is not flapping around, so I'm going to put a little bit of glue just in that area. Okay, so now that I have that done, I think that looks really good. And then we're gonna take our construction paper. In this case, it's just a white sheet of paper, but you need kind of like a stiff piece of paper. And I have them pre-cut. They're smaller than the National Geographic magazines, so that you don't have any extra, okay? So you don't want this to be showing through. You want this to cover that. So I'm gonna put this on top, and I'm gonna glue it down, and then I'll cut off the edges. So I'm just gonna put this like this, and make sure that I can cut off the edges. So I'll glue it down, and this is what it looks like. You need more of a larger view. Okay. Make sure you get all the little corners. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to trim the back. So this is my construction paper. This is my magazine part. And I'm going to trim off the excess part. That looks good, and it gets rid of the text, which I wanted, because I don't want any text in my piece. Okay, so this looks great, and now it's time for the sewing part. Okay, so I thought that pink would look really nice here, because I'm gonna be doing like a pink, sort of like, I'm imagining like little pink, like a little, almost like a little pink halo that comes away from her like that. So it's gonna fill up this area. It's just gonna go like kind of in a zigzag almost from here. Sometimes people, when they do this, they like to do like little lasers coming out of the person's eye. But I'm not doing that in this case. I want to like celebrate this person. So I'm starting with my thread. I made it deliberately very short to show you in the video easily, but you would want to make yours longer so you don't have to keep resetting it. Okay, so get your needle. You want to go for a bigger one so it's easier to use with this larger thread. So we don't want to choose something with a very tiny eye needle. You want the eye is the opening part. You want it to be pretty big because you're putting a pretty wide thread inside of it. So I'll pull this out. Please make sure that you always put these back in here when you're not using them. And then you're just going to thread the needle. So thread it through the eye. And this can be tricky sometimes. Okay, so I got it through. Now we're going to go all the way through like this, okay? So I take one end like this, so I'm holding it over here. I pull it, so I'm kind of making like a V. So I have these two ends now, okay? So here's the needle, and here are the two ends. I'm going to take my two ends, I'm going to match them up, and I'm just going to pinch them with my fingers. So this is the needle, these are the two ends, okay? I'm going to pinch them together with my finger. I'm going to pretend that they're one string, and I'm just going to make a loop and a knot, okay? So just a regular knot, so loop, right? And once you have your loop, then you put the loop, the ends go through the loop. So just pull it right through like you would do a normal knot. And now you have a knot. So when you open it up, it would look like this, sort of like a necklace with the needle at the end. That's what you want, okay? This is the same starting point as for straight stitches. So you would start with this. It's really important that you have this knot here because that's what's going to stop your needle from going through. So instead of starting my first stitch on top of this, I'm going to just mark it with my finger and start it on the back. And the reason I'm doing that is because your knot is going to end up wherever you start. So you don't want your knot to be showing out here, okay? You want to make sure it's covered by the back of the piece. So let's say that I'm going to start right here. I'm going to kind of hold my place with my finger and flip it over. Okay, and then I'm going to push it through. And it went right through where I wanted it to go. Okay, so this is where it's coming out. And now I pull it through. And as I pull it through, see how it gets stuck right there? So I'm pulling, but it's stuck. That knot is doing its job. Okay, so now I'm going to start my first part of the halo sort of thing that's coming out. So it's going to go out like that. So I'm going to go back right here. I want it to stop right here. I'm going to push it through. So now I'm kind of doing like a very elongated straight stitch. So now I made my first line, okay? Now I want it to come back. It's going to come back over here, like almost like in the first area. And just be careful of your fingers. Okay, pull it through again. And then this one go through here. And I would just continue this until I make that whole pattern. So now I could go through here. So you kind of get the idea that I'm making these like halo parts that kind of shoot out from all around her. They're just gonna come all around her, all the way down, okay? And it's gonna make her kind of look like she's like a magical being, or she's somehow like revered and, you know, honored, which is sort of what I'm going for, okay? So you would just keep doing that in whatever pattern you wanted to do, okay? Then when I turn it over, this is where I ended, and I would just go ahead and snip off my extra part and then tape the back, okay? So you don't have to actually tie this off and knot it in the back. You can just snip off wherever you ended and put tape there to hold it in place, and that's fine, okay? So I can't wait to see what you make, okay? And I will show you some examples of this in person also, so you have it to look at, okay? Good luck.